Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to an Overreaction Monday here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid before you even get started. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, notifications, like all those things. Just knock them out. Jump into the Specs chat. We're going to be talking a lot about Texas and the portal and college football in general. It's going to be one of those days. Mr. Richardson, I see you've got your FC gear on. It was a good weekend for Austin FC as well.
It was. I mean, able to get a win and everything. I just hope we play teams from LA all the time. That'd be great.
Bring on those LA bitches. We do well against those.
I mean, but it was a good win for them and good win for Sark as well as he headed into the weekend's catch.
It was an excellent weekend for Texas football. The portal as a whole has kind of taken over the sport as spring football wraps up. The Longhorns still have a few practices this week, and they'll obviously end on Saturday with the Fan Fest. Friday night, there's a scrimmage. So this thing is all kind of coming to a conclusion before we go into the rest of the offseason leading up to August.
By the way, Ketch, before you finish that thought, I thought about you over the weekend, and I laughed. And I almost put something in my column, but I didn't want to offend him. I remember Jason just defiantly acting like the portal is never going to be a thing, and you guys going back and forth on it. And now the portal's all we ever talk about. And I was just, you won't get no credit for that, Catch, but I was just thinking about the epic battles, and you're like, no, this portal thing is going to be huge. It's like, it's always going to be high school recruiting and never this newfangled reporters thing, this hippity-hoppity thing that you're talking about. It made me laugh.
I'm glad you didn't. We didn't need the public call out of Jason, but yes, that does linger in the air a little bit like he and Alex's Casey Thompson bet. Like, Correct. It's always just going to exist in the ether. Man, the Longhorns had a good weekend. I can't help but think back to a lot of the things that I've been saying throughout the last couple of months on War, where it was like, look, this is a playoff level team. You can see the talent base is as good as any in the country, but you can position by position kind of go through the roster and see, if you could make a tweak here, if you could add a player there, if you could add a starter here because of graduation and guys departing to the NFL, you could see where this program and team in 2025 would get better. You and I, in talking to different people, have both been reporting that the attitude behind the scenes at Texas was, we're all in on 2025. We're going to be uber aggressive. The goal is to win a national championship now. And a lot of people have looked at like some of the things that we've been talking about with regards to the status of the team. And they're like, oh, you guys have been too rough. The team doesn't need that much. And what I would say is that after the weekend, it seems like the coaches and the leadership inside the Texas program, their minds are kind of connected to where ours were, Anwar. Receiver, tight end, defensive tackle, got to figure out the kicking situation. And here we are, we show up on a Monday, and I think Texas has a new starting tight end, a new starting wide receiver, a new starting kicker. They've got a defensive tackle group that is going to fill in where recruiting high schoolers hasn't completely solved that problem. And it just feels like we show up today to do the Overreaction Monday show, and it's a better Texas football team that's not done getting better. And I think we're really watching the makings in the last few days of a program that's going from they're good enough to make the playoffs, but boy, can they get to the final rounds and win something? I think they've shored up some needs in a way that's starting to make me think absolutely yes.
Yeah, Catch. I mean, they understand fully what's at stake and what they're competing for. And there's a difference because other programs are competing to be good. Other programs are competing to be in the playoffs, and they're competing, Catch, to get over the hump. Like that's where their thing is at. Hey, how do we get over the hump? How do we get past the semifinal game to the national championship game? Like, how do we get there, right? It's, I remembered all those years when I covered the Bucks. You remember how they can never beat the Eagles, right, in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. It is always like, how do you get past the damn Eagles? They always feel, and then finally they're able to get past them. That's where this is at for them. It's like, all right, how do we get there? And what's interesting, Catch, is that it's, you and I both know it's easy to talk about it. It's harder to just pull it off because every team has needs. Dion went out over the weekend, Catch.
He's like, I got 40 needs.
I never known a guy who literally just had a spring game. He's like, man, I need everything, man. I'm like, wow. If you just gave your ass this past 15 practices, and he was like, yeah, man, I need this, I need that, I need that. And so anyway, it's easier, but then Texas understands what their needs are. And Sark said something similar just, a couple of weeks ago about, hey, these are kind of what the needs are on their team. Definitely not to the Dion thing, but he kind of expressed it. And then to be able to go out and catch what I'm hearing, and you correct me if you hear anything differently. I haven't heard anything. And sometimes people like to talk themselves into, oh, that's a good choice by us, but it really, it's kind of like signing day when they'll talk themselves into how like the 3-star when they missed out on that 4-star or 5-star. They seem to be happy because they're getting their first choices of the guys that they really, really want. And it seems like so far, Catch, we'll have the conversation. It's hard to see too many programs right now that are doing it better than Texas in the spring portal.
No, I don't think anybody's doing better than Texas in the spring portal. And look, I don't want to say that we or I have been critical about how they approached the December portal, but it was a little conservative. We've explained all the reasons that went into they weren't quite as active. A lot of it was still in the playoffs and having to deal with their own retention just made it tricky to be uber aggressive in the portal. And so we were told that was going to be different in the spring for all of the various reasons that kind of lead up to it. I don't think most Texas fans understand. And Thomas, I see your $5 super chat that just came in. I promise we'll get to that. Thank you for participating in the Specs chat with a super chat. Texas was really ready. I don't think enough people have appreciation for the fact that sucker opened up on Wednesday, the portal. Mm-hmm. And Texas got the majority of its portal business done on Friday, which was before 95% of the schools in college football were bringing in any portal visitors at all. This was a big weekend portal visit weekend. Look, I'll give you an example, and we're going to get into this in a second. Georgia had themselves a weekend. They added running back help, edge help, defensive line help. They brought in other guys. It's funny, both Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, all of the schools that were kind of in that playoff, kind of dealing with the same circumstances. I think we're seeing them be more aggressive in the spring to shore up their needs when maybe they weren't able to do so back in December. Georgia got 3 commitments last night, and it was really impressive, and we're giving them their flowers today. Texas doing it on Friday just means that more so than any program in the country, when they say they were ready to strike, when they say they were ready to attack, when they say they were ready to address needs, and that they were going to win, they got the number 1 tight end prospect on the board by a mile. It's not even close. Jack injuries in the spring portal. It was him and then a bunch of guys that, quite frankly, don't deserve to be spoken in the same sentence. This is crazy, Onward. I looked it up this weekend. The top 2 returning tight ends in terms of receiving yardage, power conferences from a season ago. So this would have been guys that weren't seniors or departed for the NFL or played at Middle Tennessee State or something like that. Just talking about players in the Big 4. Max Clare and Jack injuries, number 1 and number 2 returning tight ends in college football among power conference players in receiving yards. Texas misses out on Clare. Ohio State grabs him in December. Mm-hmm. The only facsimile / guy that is in that tier of players was injuries, and Texas was ready to make sure they got that done. He didn't take any other visits. That's when things can start to get a little tricky. If you get the first visit, a player is telling you, yo, if you say the right things and sweet talk me well enough, this goes no further. But the moment that a guy leaves town, and we saw it in the December portal where they brought in Max Clare, they brought in Eric Singleton, they brought in a few guys, Emmanuel Pregnon, and it was like, oh, they're leaving town?
Yeah.
Not committed, that's typically not great. And I think what we've seen is when Texas really wants a guy and when they get him, it kind of unfolds in a certain way. And they really didn't let anybody else into the party with those guys. I give them a lot of credit. They had definite needs. They got through the spring kind of poo-pooing, well, we're okay. And Sark will still say, we're a high school recruiting team first. The thing that I can't help thinking about, though, Anwar, is they struck gold last year in the portal. They're going to hope that of the 9 guys that they've brought in so far, that at least 8 or 9 of them are either starters or immediate contributors. Texas just signed the number 1 recruiting class in the country. Nobody did better. But I think we can count on one hand the number of freshmen that are going to play this season in important roles on a team that hopes to compete for a national championship. And there will be a lot more guys that come in from the portal. And I think that was true a year ago as well, when you start thinking about in totality the Makubas and the Goldens and the Bonds, and it kind of goes on and on and on, the Trey Moores of the world. The portal really has turned into, very quickly and very quietly, incredibly important to teams with championship aspirations.
I mean, realistically, Catch, I mean, the portal, if you're going out, let's say on a, Friday night, I mean, the portal for the most part is your, I'm not the portal, your high school recruiting, excuse me. Your high school recruiting is basically like the clothes that you're wearing. But the portal is your cologne. The portal is your jewelry, right? It's the thing that sets you above like everything else. And so, yeah, high school recruiting, I got my clothes on. It's cool.
I like it, Anwar.
But all these accessories that I need, that I want, my nice watch, my nice, wrist, like my nice chain, like I would put on my nicer glasses today. Like I would have put on this nice expensive cologne. Like that's really what the portal is. It takes you over the top and it separates you from everything else. And that's what Texas is using it as. Yes, high school recruiting, it's important. It is the foundation. But at the end of the day, Catch, as good as Ryan Wingo was, well, like he was starting, to your point, Jonte Cook a couple of years ago, 5-star, wasn't starting. You bring in all these 5 stars you want to, you still might have to wait, with the exception maybe the offensive line. Everybody else, even Colin Simmons, people forget, Catch, at one point last year, Colin Simmons was a 3rd-string guy. Like before we saw Colin Simmons late in the season, he still was a 3rd stringer at some point and had to work his way up there, right? Same way Anthony Hill took a little momentum. So, yeah, he'll always have the high school thing. That's always going to be a thing, right? But Sark understands that I also need some polished guys with experience, especially in the SEC, that, hey, we're not going to take a bunch of risks here. We're not looking for diamonds in the rough. Like, we're not looking to see if Ajay Hall could somehow provide us with something, and we're just kind of hoping and guessing that that's going to happen. No, they're getting guys who check the boxes, kickers who are checking the boxes. Like, I think Sark understands it's too close. They're right there, and hey, give me a couple of guys that just get us over the edge. And yeah, we'll continue to grow and develop these new guys. Like, they're continuing to grow it and developing all these guys. And Catch, everything we're hearing about some of these young guys are great, like the Dalen McCutcheon and what he's been able to do, and Nick Brooks, right? We're hearing something like that, but we know come the fall.
First game of the season's in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, that sounds cool. I'm glad you guys did great in the spring. Now go ahead and get back in the rotation, and let me go ahead and put these Dogs in because we're playing Ohio State.
Thomas, we didn't completely forget about you. $5 super chat. Feels like we need another wide receiver that can stretch the field against good teams. If Wingo goes down, we don't have another. We are in trouble. I don't think they're done at wide receiver, Thomas. And I think whatever they do, whoever they look for, probably going to be somebody with wheels. Or I don't think they'll do it. It's either going to be a receiver that can stretch the field. And I really like this kid out of BYU that entered the portal. And I know that Texas has contacted him, but he hasn't completely on war. It's funny. I got to remember his name. Keelan Marion, I think is his name. I got to go to my list real quick. I haven't memorized all these guys' names. Yeah, Keelan Marion, first team All-American a year ago at kick returner. Kind of just okay as a slot receiver at BYU. Good, solid, but doesn't have numbers that would blow you away. But I've said this a million times. And you and I kind of differ on this a little bit because I say this. I'm like, you should use 5 scholarships on special teams. And you and I will joke, 4 of them shouldn't be on kickers, though. I'm okay with the idea of Jeff Banks adding some specialists because in reality of your 85-man scholarship, you're using only about 50 to 55 guys per game. Mm-hmm. So this is a chance to add contributors in key areas that can boost your depth in really narrow way. I love the idea of signing an elite return guy. Now, they thought they were getting that in Matthew Golden a year ago, and it never materialized. Teams weren't scoring against Texas a whole lot, so they weren't kicking off. I put some thought in this on where I want your thoughts, okay?
Okay.
So, because I'm thinking about Matthew Golden a year ago, and in reality, they took him as much for special teams as anything else. He had been an all Big 12 return guy, but then he doesn't really get the opportunities because not only are you limited by the number of times you kick off, but teams are kicking the ball out of bounds, and so there really aren't a ton of returns. So there's a part of me that's like, absolutely use a scholarship on an elite kickoff return guy because, hey, man, you might as well have an All-American back there if you're going to have somebody back there. But you can make the case that Texas doesn't have teams kick off against them enough and enough balls that are kicked off go through the back of the end zone that maybe if you only had a couple of offers, maybe a specialist in the return game, if you're going to take one, it should be a punt return guy because that guy's going to have the ball kicked to him more times than a kick return guy. Does that make sense?
I don't know what the percentage is, but the majority of times they're not. Listen, if they're not kicking the ball for Texas to return it now, well, they damn sure ain't gonna be doing anything. Now look, if you're Texas and you say, hey, we just want to guarantee we're gonna get the ball on the 35 to start, like, okay, cool. Like that, if that's what you just tell yourself, like that's exactly where we need to be or something like that. I don't know. But outside of that catch, yeah. Listen, first of all, whatever we differ with as relates to the scholarship numbers, as relates to special teams, I will just say this. I feel like the people in the building are starting to lean more towards to what I'm thinking is, hey, man.
Well, they definitely don't want 9 kickers.
They definitely don't.
And like you and I are in unison on that. Do you know how many kickoff returns Texas had last year?
How many?
15. Matthew Golden had 14, and Silas Bolden had 1. That means they played more games than that. So I'm an advocate. I love the idea of add the All-America return guy. But what we're really talking about based off of last year is that's one opportunity a game. And you know how many touchdowns Matthew Golden had last year on kickoff returns? None. He only had a long of 31. He wasn't getting opportunities. The sample size. If he'd had 1 break, he probably would have been a first-team All-America return guy because his average would have been distortedly high. So I don't know. Like at the end of the day, Thomas, I agree with you. I wonder what they'll prioritize now that they've got the majority of the heavy lifting out of the way. They will. I think they're going to look for another wide receiver, but I think it has to be a guy with a specific skill set. It'll be interesting to see where they go. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if more guys enter the portal, Anwar. Yeah. The portal closes on Friday. I get the sense that there are still guys that will enter the portal this week that are waiting because sometimes schools prefer that they do.
If you're a school, the one thing you don't want is the guy that you've been coveting for the longest time to enter his name in the portal on Monday and have a feeding frenzy. You literally want that towards the end of the week, Thursday. Friday would be perfect. Just kind of go ahead and seal the deal on those things. And if I'm at GM, I'm like, hey, we're good, right? We don't need to do anything else, right? All right, and then hey, just wait, sit out for the next couple of days, and we'll stay in contact. But please don't enter your name in the portal now.
They've got 2 scholarships left. I think there will be a couple of more spots that open up. We'll see. They've been really good at retention. They haven't lost that many guys this spring. They've only had 13 leave throughout the offseason, which is an incredibly small number compared to the last couple of years.
Yeah.
If you only had 2, what would you do with them?
My gut tells me receiver automatically. That's my first thing. Give me another guy that checks the boxes to go with the other ones. I mean, I feel like if I'm just going through it, I feel like you're good at tight end. So probably now, if you got Jordan Washington and Jack Andrews, you're probably good there. Probably good at offensive line. I wouldn't be offended if they went after someone in the interior catch. It wouldn't offend me even over here. I know they love Nick Brooks. Maybe he's on the outside. I'm just running through it. Running back. I wouldn't be opposed to a running back catch. I mean,
if they've got 5, we can fill the 5 pretty easily, right? You could take a running back. I think they could take another time in a world where they have 84 like they did a year ago. I could make a case that they've got a guy that can be Gunnar Helm in this offense. Go make sure that you've got a Juan Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the babies can grow up. And if Juan Davis can't see the field because Jordan Washington is so much better than him, that's a good problem to have, having too many good players as opposed to not having enough. But I think with 2, wide receiver and because my answer is going to be different than yours.
Okay, I'm just going through it. Interior is probably okay at this point. Edge guys.
We know they like the Murad Watson kid out of Syracuse. So in a world where they only had 2, he might be the guy. That's how badly it seems like they want to make sure they shore up the interior on defense.
I'd probably go D tackle as well. I think because I don't necessarily think you need a linebacker. I mean, I'm okay with that. I wouldn't be offended with a linebacker, quite honest with you, but I think you're okay there. You would probably just be bringing in a depth piece. DBs only if somebody is legit. Like if you just got that.
There's a Jabbar Muhammad that you think could come in and just start.
Yes.
Not Javion Cole.
No. But like a Leonard Morse kind of son kind of thing. Like if he went into the portal. Like
they wish they could go back and do that one again. Let me tell you mine. Okay, I'm with you on a wide receiver. Sorry, my eye's itching. I'm taking an interior offensive lineman. I don't need him to necessarily start, although I would love to be able to find that. I don't know who I don't know who the first interior guy off the bench is, and I don't even know if they can play. So I think it's the one position where if you took a guy and let's say he started, I don't know, he's a grad senior who's played major college football. He started 5 games here and 5 games there. He's not good enough to be your everyday starter for 12 games going into the playoff, but he's an upgrade over what you have depth-wise on the offensive line. I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with taking a guy who's either your 6th or 7th or 8th offensive lineman, because in a year and we've seen Texas have years before where they've had to go down to their 6th, 7th, and 8th offensive linemen. Sometimes seasons are rough like that. Sometimes your arsenal and every healthy striker you have gets hurt, and you either mitigate it or you're spending months saying, well, we should have got somebody in the portal or the transfer window. It's the same thing here. If you ever come up short depth-wise, and it's why in August last year they took Velton Gardner, because they were like, oh, crap, we're having a rash of running back injuries. What will we do if there's another? We better take one as an insurance policy. I know there's only 2 left, but I'm a little more concerned about the offensive line. And why doesn't Texas and Kyle Flood treat the offensive line with the same level of urgency in the portal ever, not just this year, ever, as they do at defensive tackle? It looks like with one position, they're like, by God, we are going to make sure that we have enough at defensive tackle. And it doesn't feel like they have that attitude on the offensive line. And it can't be because they think all of those guys are going to end up being great players.
Yeah, that's fair. Who did they kicked the tires? Who was the offensive lineman that they kicked the tires on?
Phil Pregnon from USC, who ended up signing with Oregon. So they let us know that if the right guy comes along, they would be interested.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a case of they really want a certain kind of quality. They don't think maybe there's a starter there. And I don't know that I disagree with them on that. Although, man, Ohio State's bringing in offensive line. Ohio State is bringing in an offensive tackle who's a redshirt freshman from Sam Houston State. It's tough out there on these portal streets. But everybody needs big guys. Everybody does. And I tend to think there's not an Emmanuel Pregnon left unless he hasn't entered the portal yet. I'd feel really good about taking an offensive lineman that just shores up your depth a little bit in the case of an emergency. Or one of these young guys not panning out.
I want to be opposed to that, Catch. I mean, look, at the end of the day, what Texas has told us is no matter how much talent we have in the room, if we can make it better, we will. So it doesn't make any sense to then at that position say, nah, we're just going to continue to go at this pace. Like, no, if you do get someone Pregnon level, because if you are that close, and we know they're that close, then at that point, get yourself over the top. Like, get yourself over the top. So when you face the Georgias of the world again, Catch, you got to say, I need a line that can block those guys. That's your thing. I need an offensive line that can go against that team for 4 quarters and hold up. And we saw it in 2 games what it looked like, Catch. They were not able to hold up, especially in the first game. And so if I'm Sark and company, we need to figure out how to beat this team. That's what we're doing.
And I got to be honest, if we were talking to Kyle Flood right now and he said, Catch, I'll be honest with you. There are offensive linemen that we see that can help us beat Vanderbilt, but we haven't seen the offensive linemen that can help us beat Georgia. So we just haven't taken those guys because we're saving a spot for trying to find a guy that helps us beat Georgia. I would go, Coach, man, I get that. Like, I get it. I just think that before we get to the end, the answer can't be, well, we definitely needed someone and we wanted somebody, but we just didn't do anything at all because the right guy. At some point, there has to be, I think at this position, they got to get to the end and hope. I think there's a body there, a player there that just makes their depth better. If that's the best they can do, it is, I think, becoming the one position that I will have the most questions about going into August. Primarily because in week 1, they don't play La Monroe or North Texas. Or they play the same team that up front gave them nightmares. Now, look, it'll be a different Ohio State front. The players will change, but the level of talent will be there. And in week 1, we're going to find out where this offensive line is. A group that on paper looks like a step back from the unit that, quite frankly, got pushed around by the same team just a few months ago.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. All right, what else? You got any other hot takes?
I got one that I think helps explain the offensive line.
Okay.
One thing I think Sark, more than any college coach in the country, and this includes Kirby, because I watched Kirby this weekend. Kirby brought in some guys, and they didn't. One of the things that Georgia, I think, did a good job of is they brought in multiple guys at multiple positions, and they basically said somebody's leaving a Bulldog, and we ain't got time to let you take. There's a kid out of North Carolina, Bo Atkinson, that left Georgia and is now going to visit Ohio State, and Georgia was like, okay, but we got our edge guy, but their edge guy's from Army. You know, they're looking at defensive tackles from Georgia State and some of these other schools. Sark has a type. He does. I think Sark has a type with women. I bet. I do. We all have types. Sark has a type in the portal. And his type in the portal is not from a small school. He is not about the San Jose States or the Sam Houston States or the Middle Tennessee States or the South Dakota States or the Georgia States. If it has a state at the end of the school's name, he ain't trying to hear that unless it's a kicker. But everybody else, of the 9 guys that they've brought in, the only non-power conference player is the kicker, Mason Shipley. Everybody else, 4 guys from, I had the numbers in front of me. It's like 4 from the Big Ten, a couple from the ACC, 1 from the SEC, 1 from the Big 12. Sark has a type. And I think what's so interesting about it, and this will probably be a big thing of what we talk about at noon on House Divided, is the situation at Oklahoma. You couldn't have 2 programs who appear 1,000% different with where they are as programs. Because you've got a guy in Sark that's like, no offense, but these Middle Tennessee State guys hit about as often as 2 stars hit. And you know what? He brought in Javion Cole, who was one of the best players in the Mountain West 2 seasons ago at corner, and that dude couldn't get on the field for Texas. And I think Sark was like, well, that's supposed to be the best guy available from the small schools. That guy can't hold our jock straps. So I think as he looked in the portal, he's like, I only want guys that have come from big time. If I'm going to take a defensive lineman who's in the portal, I want to know that he's played some big boys, because that's who we play. It's fascinating. Oklahoma has hired a general manager who I think is the number 1 person in that program, whose primary skill set, the number 1 thing everybody agrees is like, this is kind of his specialty, is he finds players under the radar who other people may not have paid a lot of attention to. That's kind of his thing. I don't know that that's the way to win the SEC, is to take an All-American team from small schools and then go take on the titans of the sport. But Sarkisian is like, I'm not doing that. That's not my way. So it's fascinating to me as both of these schools finish up their first full year in the SEC. Texas is battling Georgia for supremacy amongst the big dogs with the talent that's available in the portal. And Oklahoma's looking at Missouri State. They ended up not going after a receiver from Illinois State because, according to reporting at our Oklahoma rival site, they didn't have enough wide receiver portal money to spend. They didn't have enough portal money to spend on Micah Hudson, right? If it was, we were interested in Micah Hudson, but that kid wants $1 million. Fair enough. They were forced to not go after a wide receiver at Illinois State, who, to be fair, did sign with Illinois or somebody this past weekend, maybe Missouri, somebody. But they didn't have the budget to work at that position to go get a guy. Oklahoma they're in the wrong conference. They are trying the wrong approach. They're doing what they feel like they have to do. And I don't think Oklahoma fans understand, holy shit, we're in trouble. They're competing against Georgia, Texas, Alabama, the titans of college football. And they're now trying to do it with a BB gun. It It's like being a master rock thrower. You're the best rock thrower in the world. And then you get invited to a battle where everybody else has guns. I mean, good luck. It's not a terrible thing to be the best rock thrower in the world. But in the wrong place at the wrong time, your rock is going to get you killed. And I'm looking at the way Oklahoma is trying to fortify its roster. Oh, man, this is not going to work. They're already not winning. They are circling the drain. And I think what we've seen early on may be as good as it's going to get, because I don't think we're going to see them get 5-star guys in the future. I think Oklahoma is in real trouble, and everything about what they're doing on war inside their program screams our football program does not need to be in the SEC.
Well, it's Monday. I don't want. I guess I'll just get started. I wasn't trying to get started.
If I provoke you, I provoke you.
But it is what it is. First of all,
Road Shop demands that we react.
Well, first of all, I have consistently said, and I will consistently say, that I feel like Jim Nagy, the hire and the reaction, was much ado about nothing, and I've maintained that. I've maintained a shoulder shrug with the hire. I've never been overwhelmingly lights out. This is that kind of hire that somehow, some way is going to take Oklahoma to the next level. Hell, you look at the person who replaced Nagy at his job at the Senior Bowl, and that guy, when I asked people at the Cowboys about him, he was just a guy, just a scout. That's all it was. And so the thought process of somehow, some way, Nagy is going to bring Moneyball to college football, it's just not how it works. You know why Moneyball was a movie catch? Because it happened one time. That's why it
happened because it happened with the Oakland A's.
Yes, but it happened.
New York Yankees never tried to Moneyball it.
And you know why? And guess what?
They never won a World Series.
Because the Yankees understood that overall, you know how we win? We spend money on players. And you know why they made it into a movie? Because it happened once. It was an anomaly. And you can't do that in college football. Like, that's why there are movies made out of it, because no one ever does it, right? If everyone did it, no one makes a movie out of it.
I love the Moneyball approach at Baylor. I do. I love the idea of a program like that trying to do what Oklahoma is doing. You know why? Because they got no other options. Like, what? Correct. On some level, you either go big or go home. I love the idea of somebody saying, we don't even know if this works. It might fall on its face. But you know what? We've only been to a bowl game twice in the last 10 years. So what real risk are we taking? I would love to see somebody give it a shot and then make it and make it work. And then there's a new way maybe in college football of achieving success, building success. I just don't know that in the SEC or at Oklahoma, it's stunning that Oklahoma is doing the thing that I've thought, this is what Baylor should do. This is what SMU should do. This is, a couple of notches down, schools that have to try something if they want to compete with the biggest of the big boys. At Oklahoma, it just looks like they're signing inferior talent compared to who they play against.
And they signed a backup.
Leon Cole is the example, Anwar. That guy at San Jose State was all conference. It's very hit or miss making the leap up to the SEC. It's why most of these guys that are all conferences at schools like San Jose State, they end up not making it at the NFL. Some do. Occasionally they do, but it's a little bit like talking about 2 and 3 stars. It's like, well, 1 out of 5 hits. And then is that the best math we can do, is to try to guess the 1 in 5 shot? It's a tough way to go about doing things.
I mean, it's a tough way. And at the end of the day, you've got to have the athletes overall. Like you can't just find you can't field the team full of hidden gems. Like that if you know what that makes you? That makes you Sam Houston State. That makes you San Jose State. That makes you all the other states that you want to talk about outside of like a Michigan State or Florida State or something like that, right? That's what it makes you, right? That's that. And so you might get one, but at the end of the day, to compete at the top levels, Catch, and I'll go back. It should make you proud. You've got to have some blue chip dudes, man. You got to have your blue chip guys on the roster. Like it's just that simple. And I don't care. And yes, all right. Maybe you got yourself an offensive lineman who probably is going to be a backup at your program. Who we'll see what happens. And you got yourself a decent running back from Cal. Cool, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to have more talent that's there. And they were able to get some guys. Maybe they feel good about some of the guys they got in the back in December, right? So maybe they feel good about that. But at the end of the day, Catch, you've got to have, you're in the SEC. Like the goals, realistically, you got to figure out how to get past Georgia. If you're Oklahoma, you got to figure out how to get past Texas. Like, sorry, to the last 3 years, they got their asses kicked in this rivalry game. And I just think that I think that Texas is on another level. I think the job that Texas does is at this point, from a talent acquisition standpoint, better. Oklahoma was, if they don't get Stone to come back, Catch, this weekend's just a total tragedy for that entire program. And they haven't really done well as far as with their 5 stars and the retention over the last few years anyway. That would have been kind of a devastating thing. But, right now they just look like a program that's just going to get through this year, have a coaching change, and then they'll start from scratch, in 2026 with new hope.
Yeah, I think they're in a world of trouble. And when you look at what they took in the early part of the portal, like it's a lot of guys from small schools. And I think every program should have a Jim Nagy in it, but that's only because you want as high of a quality of an evaluator and a chief of scouting to be in the program. Every program should want that. The role of that person inside the program will differ at various programs. At Texas, they don't really need their GM to be what Jim Nagy is at Oklahoma. They need something different. But I still maintain that you'd like to have as top level of a scouting eye in your program evaluating film as possible. Oklahoma just being in this position, because I think Sark is looking at what Oklahoma is doing right now. And look, that kid's got a new baby. So he ain't sleeping. I remember what it's like when you got a month-old or a 2-month-old in the house. Like the life changes. You don't smile a lot. You know what makes Sark smile? He prints out the visitor list from the portal that Oklahoma's bringing in. And I think he just giggles. Because I think that guy's motto is, don't bring me these little guys. Don't. Major conference guys. And I think he's looking at what Oklahoma's doing. He must be mystified. He must be, I don't want one of these guys on my roster. I took one last year. Guess what happened to him? Back into the portal because he couldn't play for us. And when Javion Cole committed, everybody was saying, this guy might be a starter. I was too. It was like, oh, why would you take this guy if he's not going to be a starter? He's going to come in and compete to be a starter. And as it turned out, he was San Jose State good. And I just think that his approach is just a 180 approach from what Oklahoma is doing. But I think Texas is doing what it feels like it can. And I think the thing that should scare the crap out of Oklahoma fans, Oklahoma is doing what it thinks it can. This is the best they think they can do. And they're They had better be thankful that they have other sports to cheer for. They're going to be good in softball. They just won a national championship in gymnastics. Baseball team, softball team. The football team's about to be garbage for a while. This is not the only thing that saves them, Anwar, is an A++ head coach. They have got to, when they get rid of Venables, and who knows, or the next guy, or the next guy, or the next guy. We've seen Texas do it. You hire the wrong guy, you're kicking the can down the road 3 or 4 years. And that's where Oklahoma is. It's just going to come down. Can they hire an A+ guy? And they can't go get an assistant. The need of that job is elite. It is not bring in somebody that can help us recruit kids out of Missouri State. Jay Lee, sorry we missed your super chat. With no monster names in the portal, isn't that the advantage of Nagy? He knows where to find the hidden gems at smaller schools. Jay, yes. The problem is there's no evidence that suggests hidden gems at smaller schools wins at the highest of high levels in college football.
You're talking about a hidden gem at a smaller school, feeling like that guy can compete against Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, go down the list of all the good programs. And you can't field a team full of hidden gems like that. Your team full of hidden gems is your Sam Houston State. You get your ass kicked. Like at the end of the day, this is where I'm saying, like, and first of all, they've only acquired 2 guys so far.
Well, and I don't look at anything that's happening at OU right now, really. Like Jim Nagy hasn't even, this is all Venables. Like I don't put anything on Nagy because he's been there like 5 minutes. He's not even done hiring his staff from what I've seen on the OU side. They're still talking about guys that he's going to hire that are at other schools. So, 2025 is on Brent Venables, but it doesn't change on where the bottom line at all.
Well, the bottom line is, Vanderbilt has a bunch of hidden gems, right? So that's there you go. Like there you go. They've got some hidden gems there at Vanderbilt that they're able to get guys that are kind of under the radar, or they're able to get these guys into the school now, so on and so forth, right? So that's where they're at. But at the end of the day, this is it's a program under Venables that's 22-17 that has not won a bowl game. When it's all said and done. And, and I understand that Oklahoma fans, whenever you mention them, they all have, crap to say about you. But, the challenge if I was an Oklahoma fan, and then they're not going to listen anyway because we're Texas fans. But I understand we lived through Charlie Strong. Listen, the more defiant that you are and the more that you double down on what's a bad hire, the longer you stay in it, just the longer you stay in it, the longer you want to defend it and defend your program. And you can't say to yourself, I believe this person is elite based off of what? You already got a 3-year sample. The 3 years, I remember Alex used to do that column, right? That would show that
the head coaching,
I think it would be after like a year or 2.
2 years. After 2 years, you knew whether a guy was a success or failure.
And you've got 3. At the end of the day, you already know what you have. If I was on the OU side, I wouldn't look at 10-3. I would look at 10-3 as the anomaly because that was your Dylan Gabriel years. I will look at don't look at the stuff on the outside. The 6-7 both times, not winning a bowl game, and where recruiting is at this point, and then say to yourself, okay, just got to get through the season, hope it's respectable, and then go out and get a badass hire and get the program back to where it used to be because they had badass coaches. They've had badass coaches. We know what this thing looks like under Stoops, right? We know what it looks like under Riley. So we know when Oklahoma's had badass coaches, what this.
They got to get a badass coach or they're fucked. That's just as simple as that.
Correct. And that's the part they just got to get back to getting a badass coach and they'll be fine.
Because they got to find somebody who can do better than taking players. You can't live off of these players from Coppin State. What my whole, in a world where I'm the general manager and in charge of a program and the head coach checks in with me and not vice versa, Anwar. In my dream program where I'm running a monster like Texas or Georgia or Ohio State, I might take flyers on 3 kids a year. I might save 3 spots, and I've got a Jim Nagy on my staff, and I say you get 3. Find your favorite 3. We'll take them, and if we hit on one of the 3, that's a success. Because if you hit on one, that probably means you found an impact high-level starter, an NFL guy. So hitting on 1 out of 3 would be a win. I don't want to use too much resources there, but I'm okay with a handful of guys every year swinging for the fences, hoping for a home run. You can't build the program around guys like this. And Oklahoma is going to end up signing 20-plus guys from the portal, and the overwhelming majority of them are going to come from schools that they've got like 2 guys they signed in December from Kennesaw State. The thing, though, you fans, I'm giving them advice, and I probably shouldn't. They're not nice to me. But what Oklahoma fans need to be asking themselves, that Texas fans know more about than anybody, if you start saying things out loud to believe the dream that nobody else in college football is saying, you got to ask yourself, am I the problem? For instance, there was a time when Texas fans would say things like, you know why Charlie Strong is going to get us back to the mountaintop? His 5 golden rules. Did you know that Roger Goodell came down to Austin and talked to Charlie Strong because Charlie Strong has 5 rules about running his program, and that's going to take us back to the top of college football. And you know who never says that? Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. Teams that have won national championships have never said that nonsense once in their life. Oklahoma right now is saying, hey, trust the process. What we're doing doesn't matter that that's not what Ohio State does, or Georgia, or Texas, or Alabama. It doesn't matter. We are the smartest. We have figured out the magic potion that nobody else in college football. That's why there needed to be a guinea pig. It's why Baylor should be the guinea pig, not Oklahoma. I love the thought process of what Oklahoma, in theory, is trying to do. I wouldn't want it to be my big major college football program, though, trying to pull it off.
Don't forget the P chart, because people thought the P chart was going to be something that took Texas over the top as well.
What matters, the Jimmies and the Joes, and getting as many of them as possible. And you know what? Steve Sarkisian has turned out to be elite at that. That's why they are where they are.
It's not. Hey, it's not the gimmicks. There's no gimmicks. Like, there's no Steve Sarkisian gimmick. Like, hey, Steve Sarkisian got off the bus with a bat. Oh, it's on today.
He kisses his players before they run onto the field.
It's waiting to grill. He's got a B chart. Hey, you know what? They've got the pit. And whenever anybody gets injured, they have to go into the pit, right? It's all these other things that don't even matter. You know what we say? Man, Steve Sarkisian got a bunch of badass guys. That's all we say. There's no gimmicks. There's no.
I actually think Sark and his staff are better coaches than what they've produced as coach. Like, I think Sark is a better offensive mind and offensive coach than what we saw from the offense last year or in the red zone. I think he's better than that. But, man, when you got 15 guys going to the combine, you can kind of not be on your A game. I don't know that Ryan Day was A+ last year. I didn't watch Ohio State close enough to go, you know who had a great year as a head coach? Ryan Day. But you know what? He had the most good players, and it meant he basically got a walkway to the Final Four. And then it was, we got to beat Texas, a team full of a bunch of good players like we do. And that was one of the games that you're right, Anwar. Texas is at a point now where it's like, we're going to play 14 other teams, 13 other teams this year. But the ones that we need to make our personnel decisions based on are Ohio State, Georgia, and it might just be those two teams. Can this guy help us beat them?
That's it. Because if you can beat them, you can beat everybody else, Catch. I mean,
if they can't beat them, why are you even bothering? Because you're at a point in the program now where beating everybody else is expected. Now it's, can you? And I think you're right. It's just like in the NFL where eventually the Bucs had to get past the Eagles. Eventually, teams had to climb over the Patriots. Eventually, teams will have to get past this version of the Eagles. And you have to build your team sometime with them in mind. And I think it's probably the single most important point that's probably been made is if you're Texas, and if I'm trying to nitpick Kyle Flood about what they've done in the portal, all he has to say is, Catch, we ain't seen anybody other than the Pregnon kid that we think elevates what we have that beats Georgia and Ohio State. And if he tells me that, I kind of have to go, okay, coach, checkmate, because it really is the most important point at this stage of things. It's not, does Texas have enough to win the rest of September, not including games that involve Ohio State? It's, can you go to Columbus and beat them? And the other games are kind of the belt and the shoes and the cologne. Once we get into the season, the metaphor that you used earlier is really on the biggest games on the schedule, the season definers, the playoff games, and everything else is like the pretty little things that help you get there.
Yeah. By the way, you said what?
I was just, we got anything else? We were at the hour mark.
I would just say this too, Cash, just kind of adding on to it. And this won't be, this is where, if your other programs, and especially if you're a rival of Texas, this week will be another week where you gotta look at yourself in the mirror and say, do we have the right guy? Because the NFL draft will begin this week, Catch. And what's going to happen is what happened last year, which is you're going to see a whole lot of Texas guys getting their names called. And when we get to Saturday, we're going to be looking at the number of Texas. And by the way, the thing that A&M was able to have over Texas in recruiting for a lot of years, Catch, is to say it's the SEC. Look at the number of guys who've gotten drafted here. And Texas A&M was able to attach their name to that, right? And now, all of a sudden, Texas is not only able to attach their name in it, they're also able to say, and by the way, we're one of the schools with that double-digit number. And so there's another part of that too, Catch, where it is you're talking about the portal, and the deadline that enter your name into the portal will be this week. But then Sark, if a guy enters in on Thursday and Friday, he's going to say by Saturday, hey, by the way, buddy, hey, did you see all the number of guys that we had drafted over this weekend? And by the way, Sark will make phone calls to a bunch of high school kids and say, you see what the number of guys is we've had drafted? And Sark is pointing to that and saying, hey, I'm able to get a lot of people's attention by our draft success, right? And so that's the other thing. If you're a rival of Texas, you can say, oh, these guys are saying whatever the hell that they want to say, but the success that they've had and then going to the success that they're going to have this week, it's going to be another feather cap of Sark, and it's going to be another kind of reminder that there's a distance that Texas is creating between themselves and a lot of other programs, especially their rivals.
When Texas is 5-7, Texas fans hate it when I use that metric of talking about recruiting rankings in terms of guys getting drafted in the NFL.
Yeah.
Oh, man, when your team sucks, you say things like, man, there's all kinds of good players that are good college players that don't end up playing in the NFL. What about them? You know, a school that would never have a problem with me talking about recruiting in terms of NFL draft success, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State.
Sure don't.
You know who's joined that list? Texas.
Yeah.
Because Texas fans have complained about my measuring of success. But the reality is NFL players win national championships. Washington made it to a national championship game, and it wasn't because of Michael Penix and like a bunch of spare parts. They had double-digit NFL guys. Like, that's what it takes. And Texas and Ohio State will both show that this weekend. We will look back and go, oh, the best two teams in college football last year had 30 combined guys get drafted in the NFL. And we'll go, yeah, that's the pathway. And anything less than that at this point is an unproven pathway. It's one of those where it's like, better another person take the unknown pathway than me. I'll let them, because you know what? Christopher Columbus, we don't need to get into the politics of him, but he's known as a successful, explorer. I don't ever talk about the explorers that didn't come home.
That's
Oh, Pete Mobley. Well, what happened to Pete? Well, Pete got in a boat and went. He went to go find something. And what happened? We don't know. We never saw Pete again. That's usually what happens when you go down the path that's completely unknown. Oftentimes you don't come back. Okay, guys. Like, comment, subscribe to the page.
Rogue Shop.
Oh, Rogue Shop. Let me give some love and flowers to Rogue. Texas is home for CBD, THC, all that and more. You go to the website, go shopping. I can't stress it enough. They're Longhorns through and through. Richard loves Texas football. He bleeds Texas football. He owns the company, and his wife, Shar. They bleed orange. They're such good people. They have such great product. It's like, look, if you're going to spend money and you're going to spend it on a certain product, shouldn't it go keep it in the family? That's what you're doing with Rogue Shop. You're keeping it in the family. You're going to spend it anyway. Why not put it in the hands of somebody with like interest who wants to also give money to Texas NIL? Like Richard's committed. He's in. You should be in as well. Go to Rogue Shop. Anwar, anything else as we wrap up?
That's it. Let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Boys and girls, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Hope we've entertained you. OU fans, you can be mad at us, but maybe listen at the same time. Texas fans, you're allowed to giggle if you want to. It's allowed on a Monday. Until next time, you guys have a great one. We'll see you soon. Later.